So in what way did this inspire your approach to your plot?
It didn't really, to be fair.
Okay.
I didn't know what image to select because I didn't know. I understand the image was more about how it inspired me curatorially.
Yeah.
And I couldn't think of an image because I don't really see myself necessarily as a curator, although I've organised exhibitions and produced exhibitions. So this is just an image that inspired me from when I was younger to get my creative juices flowing. And it kind of, when I see it, it just reminds me of all that nostalgia and the kind of whole 70s of entering a cinema for the first time. And a lot of my work is influenced by film, really. So that's why that image was chosen.
But is it just about that kind of excitement then of making art and doing things?
I think it is. I think it's kind of about considering about offering sensation to audiences, but also realising that sensation isn't the only way to engage with an audience. It's not the necessary seduction of the aesthetic. It might be more about audiences thinking, well, what's that? Or that's really rubbish. Because I like it when people say, when you're having an exhibition, they don't know you, and you kind of stand next to them and you're asking about your own work, and they go, well, I think it's a bit rubbish. And I quite like that divided response, rather than it being like, oh yeah, it's nice, yeah, I get that. I'm rather interested in the idea that my one-to-one relationship with artwork or anything I produce is kind of much more personal. When it's out there, the ownership sort of changes. So I think what the audience say always triggers off another exit point for me to try something else. So I kind of collect that through kind of written notes, or sometimes very secret record conversations, as I did in the first plot when I did a live performance in the press thing.
So if we put you back then to the blank space, as it were,
Right.
And you have this blank space. What was the initial impulse, or what was your initial kind of emotional position in it's a blank space?
I kind of had ideas about just leaving it as a blank space, and I think, hold on, that's not brave enough. And for the last couple of years in my art practice, in my life, I feel I've got a lot of control over it. So through my art practice, try to lose a sense of control where things aren't researched enough or thought about enough. So in the last couple of years, I've been leaving exhibitions literally a few days before and trying not to think about them. So I wanted to do something that was really experimental, that would challenge me and put me in a situation where I felt really awkward. So the first one was I found a piece of anti-curate board. So I knew that I wanted to do some sort of drawing on there, and that was it. So a day before I asked my partner, it was our 12th anniversary, and I said, do you want to do a piece about trust and control? And he goes, well, what you've got planned? I says, if I kind of sort of blindfold myself and we walked arm in arm all the way to the back from my house and I recorded the journey, would you be up for that? And he was really quite unsure. And it became this thing where I could actually see through the thing occasionally. So when I didn't trust him to hold me, I'd look at him and record his anxiety at the worst. So the point being was it's about doing something that put me in a situation where I was unsure what was going to happen, but yet I knew I was going to produce a live performance in the space.
What was the idea to test out uncertainty then? I mean,
absolutely.
Because if we pair the project back to a curatorial thing, then in terms of what was the idea that you were testing out? Was it uncertainty and just responding in your own personal response to it?
I think to begin with, it was more about my practice, and I wasn't thinking necessarily curatorially, except to do something that was challenging for me and might be quite different for audiences, rather than just a standalone show. So during the first phase, I started bringing on other artists on board. I mean, my partner's a photographer, so he was kind of artist number one, if you like. So as the phases went on, I brought on other artists to collaborate and look at things of authorship and ownership and kind of performing the work but then being the audience at the same time. So it became much more stepping towards more of a curatorial idea around selection and kind of raising questions of possibly, what is it to collaborate or authenticity. So an authorship. So it became more about, should I be curating more? And kind of when you kept sort of asking questions, kept thinking, God, have I got this completely wrong? So then
but for you, was it an art space then, as opposed
to... It was an art space, but it's becoming more like something that I think I want to have more of a distance from. So the next project that's going to start on Saturday is called Proposals. So I'll be looking for proposals, but we'll be showcasing the proposals and we'll be giving feedback, and we might be creating another show that lives outside the allotment project. So it becomes more stepping back, but still not having control over the show, not sure which way it's going to go. If that makes sense.
But were you? I suppose the question I'm asking: were you approaching the space as an artist as opposed to a curator?
I think so. Yeah, I think to begin with, mostly. Yeah, but I think within the art practice, there's an element of selection as well, especially in phase 2 when I had to select artists. Yeah. And I selected people that were completely trying to be from different sort of backgrounds to see how precious they'd be about their work. Because after every half an hour it changed and someone else came on board. And even though the artist knew once spoken to, it wasn't about being precious, but responding to what they saw. Most people couldn't respond to what they saw. They had predefined ideas.
But that still feels like an art project to me.
Yeah, so, I suppose. Yeah,
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
No, of course not. Yeah,
I think it's really good to pull out of this evening when we're talking about the difference between making art and curating art, and I think it's good for us to, I
think you're right. It was more of an art project. I think it's probably getting all the experience to decide on what makes a curatorial sort of ask. But I think it's okay as an art project as well. I think it's fine.
If that's what it is, I just think it just needs to be clear about that's what it is.
Of course, yeah.
As opposed to kind of the curating thing. So did it work as a kind of project space for you then?
It did. The only thing I got frustrated about, I always imagined this idea of this kind of cross collaboration of different plots, and you had these kind of demarcated areas which were fine. But I kind of felt there's space in between that I wanted to utilise. So phase 3, I decided to start sticking mirrors in different places. So there's this kind of, the audience were documenting the space, but they didn't. They were just taking pictures of themselves in the mirror and sending me an image, and I'd reply back with a piece of artwork. So I think as a project space, it was interesting. It's a weird space, Arena Gallery, I think. Just, sometimes there'd be hardly any audiences at certain times. But I just felt that I wish I'd been brave and tried some more cross-collaboration, but there's still time, isn't there? So, we'll see.
So what do you think that you've, I asked a similar question, I think, to Jeanette, in terms of value. What's been the value for you in terms of an artist being given a space to curate or to make art or to make projects for you?
I think the things that have kind of added to my own values, that first I met different people. And from there, I became involved in other projects. There's a project in London called the Gora Projects, and suddenly I was doing a Tom Jones number, like spoken word number. I was part of Ellie Clark's sort of show, and that was quite exciting to be part of that. And it's good to meet different people from being in the space, especially when it was install day. And every Saturday I'd try to turn up to the exhibitions. So just getting to know more people, which was really, I think, useful. And then if I do produce a show, there's all this bank of people that I kind of know bits about that I could ask for future exhibitions I have in mind that I might produce or curate.
And it's really kind of, it's a tough one because you're still in the middle of it and making sense of it. But if I put you on the spot and kind of say, how can you make sense of what you're doing? How would you kind of crystallise that, do you think?
I think just evaluating the process during, because I suppose doing after each sort of exhibition, seeing what were the challenges of, say, phase 1, and what were the successes and things that I could have done better, and how have I looked at that and pushed it forward, or when do I push that forward? So I was doing that throughout, and that became a kind of a piece of kind of like, work in itself. So that was interesting. So I'm just sort of, I suppose, experiment. I want to do something more live and experimental and sort of innovative, and that kind of made me realise kind of what I want to do.
Final question. So what's the difference between the first impulse and the first project and the final project? Is there a relationship between the two, or are they very different? Or?
I think the similarity is the fact that they have a sense of control and lack of control, but the final project kind of alludes to anti-curate, but almost trying to do the middle thought process of that, but everyone's proposal is accepted, and we're not me and the artist / possibly curator in London is going to give feedback to each proposal, but we're hoping people will maybe even be quite innovative in their approach to writing a proposal. It might not be written, it might be something quite different, and how we create an incentive around that is kind of what we're discussing this week. That's it.
Thank you. Any questions for Dan while he's here?